I'd like to welcome Mike. It's a bit of a story about Mike, because I first came across him last year at Christmas. And I was looking for a Christmas tree. I just had my hip replaced. I couldn't get around. Normally I collected my tree from somewhere else, and I asked around, oh, get a tree from Mike, he'll deliver it to your door. And so 2 weeks before Christmas, he showed up with a Christmas tree, and we had a chat. And I discovered he had a passion for ospreys. I don't know how we got into ospreys, but it happened. So I invited him to come and talk about ospreys as he was delivering this Christmas tree. And I discovered ultimately that he has a really in-depth experience. Goes back, according to stuff he told me, 38 years of experience as a wildlife specialist with lots of interests, mammals, birds, raptors. He spent 23 years working with the Forestry Commission and 10 years as sort of independent wildlife consultant. He's particularly interested in promoting education and awareness of wildlife issues. And so I thought, oh, ospreys must be a very exciting topic for us all. We're all waiting to see one in the Alsall Valley, hopefully, crossing fingers. Hopefully they're going to tell us secrets of the trade as to how to encourage ospreys to come. But I think I won't say any more. I will pass the floor to Mike. I think we're going to have a fascinating evening. Thank you very much for coming. And with no further ado, I'll pass the floor to Mike.
Thank you, Tim. I think it was to do with you saying you got a lot of red squirrels, so my ears pricked up, and the interest in wildlife carried on from there, and we went to look for some red squirrels. So yes, thank you everyone for asking me, particularly Tim, and for helping me sort out all this. It was quite strange coming to a talk that was already all set up with very little in the truck, so thank you for that. So Mike Thornley, my business is called Thornley Wildlife Services. That followed from working for the Forestry Commission, as Tim has said. I was a wildlife ranger, and I came to the Lake District 21 years ago. I know that's my middle son's 21, so I always try to remember that one. Working with ospreys was part of the job, wildlife management with deer, crop protection with grey squirrels, conserving things, red squirrels, and all other wildlife that came with the job. So it's nearly 40 years now. Next year should be 40 years from I was a 16-year-old when I went off to Cannock Chase on my moped when I was 16, and started with the Forestry Commission at what was then the YTS scheme, an apprentice scheme. I was lucky enough to get a training ranger job in Shropshire, Herefordshire, where I spent 17 years as a wildlife ranger, and then I moved up for 5 or 6 years as a wildlife manager of a team in northwest England. Then I moved on to doing 15 or so years now self-employment. So when I first moved up, ospreys were obviously big in the Lake District and Battensway Lake. That was part of the Forestry Commission at the time. I was the wildlife manager, so I was keen to get involved, along with a lot of other people that were already involved because they were so important. And this is the time that ospreys were still persecuted, eggs were still pinched. I say the time because they're not so much persecuted and pinched anymore, eggs and that. Things have changed a little bit in that sense, but 20 odd years ago, there was nest watches on, 24-hour nest watches going on. There was talk of how to protect the nest tree with things coming around it, fences around it. That doesn't go on now as we've moved on, and we've got a lot more ospreys, certainly in the south, which we will talk about. So just on my first slide there, that's basically here, that's the photographer's dream. So ospreys have a real following with the photography. I've just picked that up just on that one, because that's what they're looking for. The iconic osprey diving into the water. head straight forward, legs stretched out, diving in to catch that fish. And photographers go up into Scotland and into the north of England now, having a look for that sort of image if they can get it, and wherever the Ospreys are, Rutland Water, Leicestershire and places like that. Let me move on. So yeah, a little bit of history. When I first started with the Forest Commission, I was put in the office and told that we've got a really rare bird here. So the bird at the top here, this one. So when I was just a young 20-year-old, I was told that this is down as a buzzard site in the conservation maps, but actually it's a goshawk. And we've got 30% of the country's goshawks, and it's really important that you look after this site. And its code name is it's a buzzard. Okay, fair enough. So from that, in my time then, the 17 years, I got really involved with goshawks and looking after a Schedule 1 raptor that the goshawk was. And our goshawk nests in mature forest. And of course, the Forest Commission is always felling mature trees. So hence the problems. In the spring, goshawks move into the territories, just like ospreys move into their nest sites here. And the harvesting forester, needless to say, wasn't very pleased when he saw me coming in the office in March, April, when we got nesting pairs, because he was like, don't tell me you found some more, I've just moved thousands of pounds worth of kit into harvest there. So goshawks caused a lot of problems. And as my notes there say, 6 to 30 sites in that 17 years. So we had a relative success of looking after them. In the end, we worked out the best management was to actually manage the site and not fell the trees where they were nesting. So we had what we called retention sites, where we looked after them. Because most raptors are site faithful, and they'll come back to the same site, the same nest. Of course, the Forest Commission in them days was felling it, and then it would move into the next block. So it was easier to keep a small parcel where they were and look after them. So yes, I got very good on the goshawk side of things. We also had a honey buzzard. Another spring summer migrant, just like the osprey, that will come and nest over in the UK. So we had a honey buzzard, just the one site, and we had to look after that. That nest took some finding. It was really difficult to find because it liked to nest in a little bit thicker cover in a Scots pine plantation. So I was looking after a honey buzzard as well, which was really interesting as well, and really good. Specifically feed on wasp grubs and hunt out wasps and things. Unbelievable to look after that. But my main job was looking after the goss. That led me to writing the management plans on how to manage the woodlands, so the Forest Commission, and then it led me to be the FC Raptors trainer across the UK into Scotland to go and give advice on the practical side of it. And that's where I come from. It's more the practical advice of what to do on the ground, how to look after raptors on the ground and how to manage them. Rather than some of the technical information and the general information about them. My skills are more out in the field of what to do practically with the birds. So FC Raptor Trainer went around, advised the harvesting gangs, advised the marking teams, advised the foresters on how to manage raptors within their woodlands, and Schedule 1 raptors in particular, because they're obviously protected by law, just like your osprey. So once we're in the knowledge of that we've got a Schedule 1 bird nesting on our land, we then have to become responsible for it. And in a sense not disturb it. Willful disturbance is the thing, and there's cases every year of willful disturbance. Most of the guidelines on the raptors are advisory, so things like osprey, 600, 800 metres zones, do not go and disturb. They're advisory. The likes of S-weight water that I'll come on to down by me, if we put an 800 metre zone around that, then the lake wouldn't be a fishery, there wouldn't be nobody there. So it wouldn't work. So practically, we put some buoys around it, 150 metres, and that just kept the boats from going close. The ospreys actually came when it was a fishery, and there was boats there. So there's a bit of argument there that actually some of these zones, and that's why they're advisory for people. So that was interesting to work with that area. I've been an expert witness in court a couple of times, one for an egg thief that I set up a watch for, and it was one of them things that everything fell together and managed to catch him going down the road, and I managed to pull in front of him on a narrow lane, and another pickup came up behind him, nothing to do with it, but he just stopped him in his tracks, and luckily the police came the right way whilst he lit up his cigarette, and we found the eggs under his seat from the goshawk. So that was an interesting one. And then just a willful disturbance one, somebody taking people to see them that shouldn't be, hadn't got a license. So you have to have a license once you start to work with these birds if you're going to go and disturb them and check on them. And recently an expert witness gave a report into the North Lakes case that's relevant to us up here to do with ospreys. And I won't go into that, but that was just asked for my opinion on what I thought about things. What have I been doing? Mainly giving management advice to landowners, to organisations, Natural England, I've worked with them quite a lot, RSPB, I've been doing a bit of work with the Cumbria Wildlife Trust recently, that's been fantastic, they're doing a great job in the south of the county. I've been involved with the North Lakes Nest, to say on the Forest Commission, and on the private side of things there as well, so all around in Cumbria. Recently, over the last few years, we've now got ospreys in North Lancashire, and also built the nests in North Yorkshire, Bolton Castle Estate. That's well publicised. I have to be careful that I don't say anything that's not too publicised. So North Lancs is fine, although it does get out, but Bolton Castle we can say because it's gone all in the papers. That has been real success. And I work with particular people, Pete Davis, a superb expert on ospreys. I tend to provide the support of building the nest, the practical work, and helping him send chicks down for ringing. So I climb up the trees, getting a bit too old for that these days. So if it's a difficult nest, I will ask a younger, fitter guy to go up and do that. I've been doing a lot of work around there, up in the lakes. So providing that climbing team, advice, platforms, I've got Lancs and Yorkshire success there as well. And not to mention the South Lakes has gone from a few pairs in the last 10 years, 15 years, but the last 10 years it's really gone into double figures. So actually in the South Lakes we're now looking at double figures of ospreys, just early double figures. We tend to be getting a new pair every year, which is fantastic, and there's a good few people doing a good bit of work there. Okay, so we've got our osprey. There's one species, but we call this one the Western Osprey. It's had other names in its history: seahawk, riverhawk, fishhawk. There's an Eastern Osprey, the Australasia, that's a non-migratory, but we're dealing with this Western Osprey. Approximately 50,000 pairs worldwide, so they're not a rare bird worldwide. In fact, they're a very common bird worldwide, found on all 5 continents. So they are not rare worldwide, but what they have been is because they've had persecution in this country and they've been extinct in England since 1840s, in Scotland since 1916, I think it is, until the well-documented return in 1954 to the UK. And then, of course, England will follow on that later on, 2001. And of course, we've got the ospreys at Bassenthwaite Lake. That is well documented in 2001, the success there. At the same time, a few years before, a translocation project was going on, and they also had successful breeding at the Rutland project in Leicestershire. Where they translocated chicks and then looked after them a while, and then they went off on their migration and came back successfully to breed. So that went on for a few years, and of course here. But locally, I'm reliably informed, 2000-2001 in the Eden Valley, there was also chicks, but it didn't get documented quite as much. So in the history, just over the way, For a few years, you had ospreys just over in the Eden Valley, closer to here than anywhere else. So that's quite interesting. And they had a couple of years of being successful. There was a bird that was shot, found shot, and then the other bird then didn't return back the next year. And since then, it's dwindled away and nothing has come back. And I'm also informed that one of the last breeding pairs in England was just up the way towards Penrith from here. And it's actually documented in some books, and it mentions Ullswater. So in the early 1800s, there was still a pair, Eden Hallway, I believe. So you have got a history in the Ullswater area, Eden Valley, in this area of ospreys, nesting ospreys, before the South Lakes even took off. But it wasn't far behind, because there was birds starting to show up down there at the time. Okay, so here we can see the pathways. So basically we have spring, summer migrants here, and they're on the way returning from Africa. So interesting, there are birds. You know, these birds that we're looking after here, they're English birds. They're bred here, they're born here, and then they fly back to Africa for the winter. Why not, do we say? But like most things, it revolves around food. So going off back down to here on its migratory path, it will find a better climate for the winter. Better fishing, longer daylight hours. If it stayed here in our cold, wet winters, shorter days, rougher weather, less time to find food. Fish are not near the surface, where in the warmer weather fish go deeper in our climate in the winter, and say less daylight hours to fish. So part of that migration is to do with food. So they whip on back to Africa, West Africa, Gambia, Senegal is quite common. Some stay in Europe, Portugal, Spain, places like that. And we think more commonly now we're seeing birds coming back as 2-year-olds, rather than they come back in the second or third year. We're seeing even some birds that we think are even yearlings returning back, and we think these are staying in France and Spain and not going on the full migration as chicks and surviving and coming back. One point that I'll mention is that at least 50 to 60% of these chicks probably don't even return, which is common with a lot of raptors, that they don't survive the first winter. But of course an osprey that's on its migration has got 3,000 miles to go, and then 3,000 miles to come back. So it's got a few pitfalls in between, weather and human persecution that may still go on in other countries on its way. So that's its migration, but they've just gone the other way. They've just gone back to here for the winter, and then come the end of March into early April, they will fly back. Of course, they go up into Scandinavia and other parts as well, but our ospreys coming back here to breed, and then the chicks will then go back. And of course they're the flyways for the winter visitors back to their breeding ground. So we get winter visitors, mainly waterfowl and things like that come in, waders and all sorts of things like that. So the migration is actually really interesting. But our ospreys, say, come at the end of March. It's getting earlier every year. Of course, probably global warming, something like that, but there seem to be a few days. When I first started doing this, it was early April. Now it's any time from the 20th of March. So it's almost gone 2 weeks earlier when we will return. Okay. Some of these slides are a little bit old. There's an old map of Scotland that's fairly full of ospreys, 200 plus pairs now. That's fairly good. In England and Wales, probably around the 50 pairs. What here's missing is the northeast, Kielder Forest, there's us there. But up in this corner here is Kielder Forest that's got 8 to 10 pairs as well. But of course there's birds been down in the Pool Basin nesting this time as well. So there is a few more pairs. There's the Rutland project just in the middle. A great success, and some really good people that have been working on that. And then we've got a few pairs in Wales as well, which has been really good. And there is a little bit of crossover between the people. I put a little press release out about the birds in Yorkshire, and I happened to mention that one of the parents was from Wales. And little did I know, I was then inundated with the Osprey projects that are going on in Wales. What's the number? Is it our bird? You know, is it our chick? And of course, like all of us, we're passionate about it. And once we said it was which bird it was, they were over the moon. And then we've got a relationship talking to them. So that was really heartening to know that everybody over there was really keen on it as well. So yes. So let me move on. So yes, a 99% fish diet, 300 to 400 grams per day they need to eat, which is, you know, a pound or just over a pound, just under a pound of fish type thing a day. So they have to be quite efficient at catching these fish. So yeah, it's ultimately, it's where the fish are is where you're going to find your ospreys really. So if you follow the good fish populations, that's where they're going to be successful, and that's where they're going to then increase. They nest in loose colonies, so they're going to come back to where these strongholds are. And it's one of the reasons that over the time I've realised that the South Lakes is really important. One thing we've done is we've had cameras on the nests, and that has showed us what type of fish have come in. And interestingly, the South Lakes, there's a strong relationship with Morecambe Bay. 20 miles of sand that then goes to 20 miles of shallow water every day that's actually full of flatfish. Dabs, flatfish, they have a few mullet. But even on the nest by where I live at Eswaite Water, 7 miles, they bring in flatfish to the nest at certain times a day. Now, Eswaite Water is full of coarse fish, full of trout, but at certain times and temperatures, then fish will move down in the water. It's quite deep, the lakes around here are quite deep. So the fish go out of sight and out of view, because they'll only catch them in the first, foot or so of the water. But Morecambe Bay, every day, it's the perfect fishing depth. So it kind of makes sense why we started to see all these flatfish coming in. They know they could go and catch them once that water started to come in. And of course, they'll know when the times and the tides. So that's certainly a strong relationship we've found by putting these cameras on the nests. They're quite unique birds, have a reversible outer toe, so they have 3 forward facing and 1 back, but they can then move their outer toe back round to make 2 and 2. And this is to carry the fish. Okay, a slimy, slippery fish, so they have this extra reversible toe, and also on the pads on the claws, they're really rough and jagged, so it helps to grip the fish, which is really interesting. Closable nostrils when diving for prey, their eyelid, they have a nictating membrane in there, an extra eyelid that shuts as well, a little bit like owls have. And oily waterproof plumage, of course, because they're going to be dipping in and out of the water. They're not successful every time when they fish. Even the more mature ones will take 3 or 4 goes to get, probably 1 in 4 they're successful. Of course, you've got to get good at catching the fish, particularly the males that hunt for the females when they go on the eggs, Okay, usually mate for life, as I've said. So every year we're in anticipation with our cameras and our leg rings to see if the same birds come back to the nest. Average lifespan around 10 years, but of course that's very variable. There has been birds known to get towards 20 years old. Return after 2 to 3 years. So when they first go back to Africa that they've just done, actually it's the female that leaves first. They don't leave as a family group. The female leaves first. The chicks will go, and then the male will follow on at the end. But they'll all go individually. But the weather has to be right. It has to be nice, settled weather so they can feel. And it's the same when they come in. You wait for a settled spell of weather for them to come in. So they will be returning, and the chicks rarely come back in their first year. They will spend the first year in Africa, getting a little bit more mature, and then they'll come back as 2-year-olds. Return after 2 to 3 years. They will nest build in the first year, and probably not successful in most cases. And then they'll breed at 3 to 4 years, 3, 4, 5 years old. Some don't, some, it's about getting the pair together straight away and working like that. Some will float around on their own. Some will move locations. Some will be in the Lake District 1 minute and then gone across to Kielder the next. Some will float around for a year or two. Some of the work that I've done, because I work closely with 1 or 2 others in the field, is that we get around June time, once the chicks are on the nest, the spare birds that we call them, the youngsters if you like, if I haven't paired up with somebody to start with, around June time, the birds have a little bit more activity and they may find another mate, another young mate. And what they do is they go and find a new territory and they'll build a play nest. So they'll throw up some sticks, they'll make a bit of a play nest. So what I've managed to do over the last few years, the people that are out there observing ospreys, they've been able to identify where these ospreys have been building the play nests. And of course, we'll go and approach the landowner. It might be a landowner that's already got ospreys on, and I'll build them a platform. 90% of the ospreys that we've got are on platforms. And why not? I go up there and I build a nice 4 foot by 4 foot timber frame, weld mesh on there, I even put sticks on for them and actually put them some nesting material on there to attract them in. Their play nests that they build as youngsters tend to be in generally really poor trees, and with the storms that we get these days, they blow out anyway. So by going and building a nice big secure nest next to where they are, or even in the same tree if it's blown out, they come back the following year and they must think they've hit gold, really. It's like a hotel for them. So you can see one here, on here, that's at Heybridge Nature Reserve, down in South Lakes. So you can go and visit Heybridge Nature Reserve. That nest is some 150 metres away from the buildings. They've got scopes set up. I went in and built them a nest. I've actually had to go back in early this year and build them another nest because it all blew out in the storm. And one thing that I do when I go up to the nests before they return in March is we go and do a nest. I do a nest check as part of my service, where I'll go and check that the nest has survived the winter storms, check it's all secure and safe. So I'll go up and sometimes I'll actually take some of the sticks and the material off because it's building up. They build it, some of them will put a couple of foot on. And once they start to go up like this and like this, they tip out. And the last thing we want is a nest tipping out when they're on eggs or young chicks. So it does no harm whatsoever. When I first build the nest as a new one, we just put a foot on. They normally add a foot. Then in a few years, we tend to take a little bit off for them. They're also very heavy inside because all the material that they bring in grasses and mosses to line it. That coupled with rotting fish makes quite a nice mix. And quite often there's a big turf of grass on there that's grown later on and in the spring. And the nest also starts to dome over. So when they bring fresh sticks in, the nest goes like this. So I tend to do a little refurbishment, make a little cup for them, scoop it all out so the nest is perfect for them to make a start. But they will still naturally bring sticks in and nesting material. So it's a little bit of a helping hand, if you like. But I think it's given them a hand because they're not prolific breeders, as in, like I mentioned, we may be getting 1 extra nest a year. So by giving them that helping hand, it helps. By putting platforms up as well, here, like this, we can also dictate where we might want them. So it might be a landowner that don't particularly want them there, or it might be that they've gone and nested by a footpath, or it could cause complications. So if I was to move a certain nest 150 metres just over the bank somewhere or whatever, and they take to it, it might be in a better spot. The other thing to that, it could be in a better spot for you to view. It might be a nature reserve where they think, oh, if that platform was put there, we could look from this spot across rather than hidden in the trees. Foulshore Moss is a great example of that this year, down by me with Cumbria Wildlife Trust, where they've had a couple of pairs where people have been going, but for a while, one of the pairs was a long distance away. people were still going and enjoying it. Fantastic seeing ospreys. But this year, if anyone follows it, they've had a pair, and it's only 200 metres from the boardwalk. And I went and put this lovely tree in for them against an old tree, rebuilt the nest for them, and they come straight on it, working with the team at the Cumbria Wildlife Trust. So again, now they've got the osprey where they want, and the visitor experience has gone from 400 or 500 metres in the distance to now it's 200 metres. And again, whilst regulations might say in the book, recommended no disturbance, they've actually gone there while the boardwalks and people were there. So the actual experience now. And they're fairly chilled birds, to be fair. So that's a little bit about platforms and some of the work that we've been doing there. The Natural England site down at Roudsey, that was one of my first nests that I did. Back in 2014 that was successful. The year before it tried to nest on a pylon on Holker Estates. Well, the electricity board weren't too happy that it's trying to nest on one of their pylons. It didn't really want them to encourage one on a pylon. So next door was the Natural England's Nature Reserve, National Nature Reserve. So I went in there and built them a nest. I tried to build it like a pylon. So I found a nice pine tree. They like pine trees. I got a triple ladder, and it's still there, albeit the top half snapped off and we've rechanged it. And I actually pushed the last bit of the rung of the ladder out the top of the tree and put a dog panel section on it. So there's a big silver shiny looking like a panel. A few twigs and branches like we do, set it up, and sure enough, in April then, when it was a bit earlier, I built it in March. In April, I got a message saying there was birdseed mating on the nest, and they've nested there ever since, so it's been fantastic. And that made their front pages of Natural England as a National Nature Reserve. It's the only ospreys they've got on a National Nature Reserve. And that's still going strong. And we've got a bird there, he's mentioned it a little bit, I'll mention it a bit, called YC, which has been a real story to do with the ringing work that we do. So I've got a note of there of 5,000 from the electric company. We've got £5,000 we're given to Natural England from the electric company to sponsor building the hide. My bill wasn't $4,999. It was nowhere near, but they did sponsor. Could you do something with it? We'll sponsor your nest and sponsor the ospreys. Because again, at that time, there wasn't too many of them around. You know, that's 10, 11 years ago. So it's a while ago. Camera, we put a camera on there, we put a hide up. So that was really good. Yeah, so a little bit more information on the birds. I've mentioned about when they return at the end of March. Eggs, mid-April. 2 to 4 eggs, 3 is quite common. Some of the new birds that establish probably lay a couple, and they struggle a little bit to start with, but good birds, good healthy birds, quite regularly 3. Occasionally, if the females are in tip-top condition, the breeding condition, they'll lay 4. Occasionally we found an egg under, when I go up to send the chicks down, I get shouted from below, is there any eggs there? Because they get covered and buried, but to be honest, I put my hands down in there before and found, eggs that have been there for months, and it's not a pleasant smell when I've done that. So if I'm being honest, I know it's on the camera there, but I have a little scratch around. If I see one, I pull it out, but I'm not going digging in that nest. There's flies and insects and all sorts in there. But yes, 3 or 4 eggs. 3 eggs is quite common. So they'll go and sit on the eggs. So when they're returned, they'll obviously fly around, they'll pair up. The male comes first quite often and will re-titivate the nest. Sometimes it's the other way around, but they do return within a few days generally. Occasionally we get one that's waiting there and we feel sorry for it, it's sat there for 2 weeks. And eventually the pair come, but generally they come within a few days. The male will titivate the nests up. The female will decide if she's going on that nest or not. Generally they do. They'll have a couple of weeks then of flying around and mating. And then after a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, they'll start to incubate. The eggs are laid 2 days apart, so for a clutch of 3, they'll lay the first one, 2 days later a next, 2 days later a next. And of course that relates then to the hatching, that you'll get a chick appear, a couple of days later another chick will appear. So you get sometimes a little bit of size difference in them. Generally they catch each other up a little bit, but sometimes when we're ringing we say, this is probably the last one to hatch out, you know. We do lose odd chicks, we've lost odd chicks this year, because we've got these cameras on the nest we're able to see, and you're able to see a dead chick on there, which is quite disappointing, but we're prying into a little bit of nature there really, and these things naturally happen. We lost 1 or 2 this year, just because there was a bit of dampness in the spring when they were young. So incubate, so for the female, does most of the incubating, 37 days or so incubation around that, then 2 to 2.5 months to fledge. So she spends a good lot of time sat on that nest, and we know when she starts to incubate the first egg because they'll stay on that nest overnight, if you like. They'll weld themselves to the nest. Up until then they're up and they're off the nest, and then eventually they'll settle. But of course when the nest building, they're bringing in bedding and lining, and the cup gets deeper and all you just see is just the top and just a little head poking up. So she's got a big incubation time there, and she relies on the male to go and catch her fish, so he has to be a good fisherman. So he has to go and fetch the fish, bring it in. She'll go off and have a feed, maybe come off the nest for an hour or so every day just to have a stretch. She's been on there overnight. The male will inevitably fish early in the morning, catch a fish, and then timing wise maybe something a bit later in the day, and have a bit of a break in between. And then we hope that the weather's good for them as they carry on. That's a critical time, is them first few weeks, and the first few weeks on eggs for disturbance. So if you come down Esthwaite Way where I live, and you start wandering about in the fields, you'll hear some yelling and somebody herring across the fields at you. Normally people from the youth hostel across the way that have a wander into the fields. I'm herring across there saying, keep away from that nest, even though it's big and quite obvious, but people don't realise just how close they are to it. Yeah, that's a little bit of their cycle. The same birds returning, and then they're forming these loose nesting colonies like we've established down in the South Lakes now. The North Lakes ones really haven't developed much of a colony, disappointingly, just 1 or 2 nests per year. In recent times it's just been 1 nest, which is a bit of a shame. But I think probably as a reflection, the South Lakes is that strong with the Morecambe Bay link that we've discovered, that is probably their paradise really. Probably, you know, it's got similarities with having the coast and inland waters to where they go back in parts of Africa, you know. So that's really been a good one. I have been up to North Lakes, and we have built a few nests and platforms up there. And I believe you know, there might be 1 or 2 birds back up there again at the moment. And of course that's going to be good for here. The more that we increase there, the more they increase there, then hopefully something will return back for you guys. So they will breed through to fledging, and they will return early September. Because they return early, they tend to they've been going back a little bit earlier, we've found. And in between that, we do some ringing, which we will move on to. Okay, so that's back at home. I actually live, there's the farm, I actually just tucked in there. The nest site is just round on this area here. So that's Esthwaite Water, and I put there the famous bread basket. It must be nearly 20 years that nest has been there. One of the fishery managers at the time put a bread basket up in the tree to form his platform, and it's still there. I've been up and I've extended it and put some rods through it and made it bigger, because the nest was going like this and it was tipping out all the time. We've put a new platform on, we've got cameras on there, a bit of an interpretation at the fishery itself, and a live feed to the fishery into the cafe. So Esthwaite Water is a great place to go and see ospreys. You can even take a boat out for an hour and get 150 metres from them and see them around. And there's a guide there that will take you if you want. So it's just a great place. It's a game fishery, trout fishery, it's a coarse fishery. There's people there on boats, but the birds are used to it. So it's just a great place to go. You can get really close. So yeah, that's a really good place to go. So I mentioned about moving on to the ringing of the chicks. So just a few weeks before they fledge, when they're the right age to ring, just before they're going to fly off the nest really, we need to catch them at that right time to nip up and ring them. Which helps with our understanding, and we've been doing it that long now that chicks that I sent down, you know, in 2015, 16, 17, we are now seeing them coming back and breeding. So it's really nice to see the chicks now being successful as adults. Of course, not all birds come back to the same place. Some of them dart around in different places and go to other sites in the country. But we do get some of the birds back that we've rung as chicks, which is really nice. So there's a protocol. There's one or two experts in Scotland, fantastic guys that have worked out protocols. You know, the weather's got to be right. It can't be raining. It can't be this, it can't be that. The birds come down individually in a bag. Don't clump them all together to be rung. So I will get up there, send the birds down in a bag. The ringing team will be at the bottom, and they will put a colour ring and a BTO ring on them. The silver BTO ring, and then the colour ring that you can see here. It has either 2 letters or 2 numbers, and that's in 3 positions around that ring, the same numbers, so they can be seen by bird watchers, observers, to then report back where it's been seen, or report back that that's come onto our nest, and that's the information that we get. And for us, quite often it's a camera picture that says, yes, our bird's back from last year. So it's really good. The right leg for England and Wales in recent years, and left leg is Scotland. So we also, and colour codes and different things. So the guys that do the ringing are fanatical about it and absolutely fantastic to work with. They'll take they'll weigh the birds, they'll measure wing length, and more or less straight away with their expertise, they will tell you if it's a male or female as a chick. So it's really interesting, and we'll mark it down. They'll send them back up once we've had a couple of photos, put them back on the nest, and after about half an hour or so at the nest, 3/4 tops if you've got a full brood, we're out of there. So we don't hang around. The only thing you have to hang around with is me going slowly up the tree these days. But generally, it's a good professional job, and it gives us a lot of nice information. Right. That's one of the photos I took when I was up the nest, so it was really fantastic. That's down on the nature reserve down there at Roudsey. So the project's on the go. It's expanding with new platforms. Obviously, we're into double figures down there. There's more work. We're getting into Lancashire. We've got 1 or 2 platforms in Yorkshire. And the only way that they're heading is thankfully, is the right way on the way up. I've been over towards Kielder Forest, an odd estate over that way, doing an odd platform recently. And over to the west coast as well. So there is birds popping up here and there. So every year I get a message from 1 or 2 of the Osprey experts and that around, could you come and build us a nest and sort us a nest out? And we go there and assess. If I can put it in a tree, we do that. Sometimes we use a telegraph pole, but we'd rather use a tree more because it's more stable generally. You ain't got to dig a hole and try and prop it in. And telegraph poles tend to be a bit short, so if we can get it nicely up into a prominent position in a tree, that's what we do. So we have a look around and assess it, get moving on. More ospreys to spread into the wider landscape, and that's what we're all working towards. You know, we've got just over a couple of 100 pairs of ospreys in the UK. At one time it was 2,000 or so pairs, you know, before all the persecution of a lot of things in the late 1800s time. Okay, Good quality cameras was something that I've struggled with. The last 2 years, there's a promotion for Zeiss. These are what I've been using. Zeiss C-Cam cameras, we've been using them for the last 2 years. Great quality pictures, and touch wood, everything's been working fine with them. So sometimes people ask what cameras you use. We were using Spy Point, but they're a company that are based in America, and you just have to have live chats in the middle of the night and things like that with them. So it's not great. So in the UK, it's been hard to find a company that are giving you good quality cameras and you can actually deal with. But Zeiss and their reps have coming out with these, and they're really good. You get an app on your phone, and you can send as many pictures as you want. I've got them set up every hour on a movement, and then it'll send you another one every hour. So if I've got 8 or 9 cameras on the go, I don't really want images coming every minute. I get whatever that is, 100 images every day once we start anyway, and tend to switch off from it a little bit, but it's always on there. And it's been quite handy that a landowner might have said, oh, I think there's a problem on the nest, or there's this, or there's that. And we've been able to have a quick look. One thing we did see this year on one of the nests was the osprey flying off in distress. And we could tell by the way it was flying that it hadn't, it just took off straight line. We got the image of it taking off like that. This bird wasn't seen again. And it was a nest site that failed this year for us. It had been successful for 4 or 5 years before that, one of our most successful sites, bringing in 3 chicks. And the female disappeared when she was on eggs. And what we've put it down to, obviously, is a couple of things. One, it could be human. We didn't think that, somebody going there to, destroy the nest or shoot it. We didn't think it was that, with no history on the place. What we think is that there's 2 things potentially that could take it. One could be a peregrine, the other could be a goshawk, and it's more favourable that it would probably be the goshawk. We thought that to start, but then a few weeks later, at the Heybridge Nature Reserve, an osprey was seen tangling with a goshawk, just a few weeks later. So we think we've got a bit of an aggressive goshawk in that area. Cumbria isn't awash with goshawks by any means, but there is a few around. So we think more than likely our favourite is that it was lost to the goshawk. It succumbed to the goshawk. So occasionally things like this happen, but we actually saw that on the camera. Where's it gone? And then we saw this image of it flying off, never to come back. And of course, on chick stage, egg stage, it wouldn't want to be off there at all. So good quality cameras, and the Zeiss are working well. There's a 30-metre cherry picker. That's our S-weight nest. The fishery manager at the time set up some scaffold poles, and he wanted to put 2 cameras on to send the image back. That's not a very good picture, sorry, but that's the TV screen, and that's the view out the window at the S-weight Cafe, and that's the TV screen that we've got the 2 nests on. Not great, but what we did is we've got a camera above it to look down on, and a camera on the side, both working together. But what we hadn't anticipated, that the one that we put on the scaffold poles and up above, if it went wrong, a climber can't get at it, because we couldn't safely get up that scaffold pole to go up about another 6 foot. So when it went wrong, or when we had to do some work, we had to bring in a 1,400-pound cherry picker. So needless to say, we've changed the camera setup there so we can actually get at it from climbing up from the ground. So yeah, a little bit of thought around that. Obviously a 2-man team for the climbing team for safety. And I'll be going around and doing some of that work there. Cameras set up and working, nest checks, cameras set up on the nests, ready for the birds to come back. That's what you'll find me doing in March. Okay, then we get the images. There's YC, just coming up there. You can see his leg ring just there. So we pick up these images. You get the time, dates. There's 2018 slide. So you get these times. But it's interesting to know when they first come back, which is the first one's coming in. So we're always watching them, and the first one's back, and send a few messages around. Again, that's on the same nest. A bit of mating going on. We realise that we're watching it and realise a second bird's turned up. So it gives us this information that, yeah, there's two birds there. But at that time, some of the younger birds, or even the established birds, will go round to different nests before they go back to their original nest. So there is a period where the ospreys just flutter around a little bit. I mentioned YC a little bit. So he was one of our first birds back, so we had a bit of a story. He was at the Rowdy Nature Reserve, the YC, white and black on the leg rings there, the same male for the past 11 years. So that's the sort of information that we're getting, the range, the ages of the birds. And of course we get some birds that don't have any rings on at all because the landowners didn't want the ringing. There's a couple of sites that don't have any ringing. Most of them do because it just helps us, but there's a few that we call no ring. And if you look on here, you can go onto different websites and get information on different birds around. You see here, look, Bassant's Way, 2009. It's not really called Mrs. No Ring. It actually means they got no ring, and the male didn't have a ring as well. So that's the sort of information. The more that we've been doing, I think the more and more we're getting rings on them. I say 40 days and eggs, then 5 weeks until ringing if they survive. So there's the sort of images that I said that we get once they build and they sit on the eggs. And that, like I say, if they survive, mentioning the one that we've lost. And the weather, of course, plays a part. Predation, weather. It could be that birds are scared off the nest and like a corvid or something can go in. It's not been known. The Bassant's Waite birds, I think, got raided by magpies one year and lost their eggs. So there is odd incidents. You get odd incidents, particularly in goshawk areas, of them predating other raptors. I know whales have had problems with goshawks leaping onto the nests and taking the young chicks when they're sat on them. Yeah, there's a bit of a pecking order there, so to speak. So it does happen occasionally, predation does happen occasionally. And of course human disturbance, which we all try to work out. Nighttime images there. I actually clicked them off my phone in the end because it was a bit pointless sending the nighttime ones, unless I was particularly concerned about a site. I mentioned about the camera that looked down on the nest. That was the image I was getting off the one that was looking down. So it was actually great. You could see when the first egg was laid and see when the first chick hatched. Some of the best images we get are when the chicks are just a day or two old and you find the finesse of the big hook beak that they've got, just picking out little bits of fish and feeding little tiny morsels to the chicks. And we actually catch them images on camera. I've got some absolutely fantastic pictures that come through of just the little tiny chicks just sat right upon that nest. So, as I've said, just the final bit, we're up to sites into double figures, working with the landowners, alongside a great guy called Pete Davis, a local expert who's based further north in the lakes here. We work together and team up to do the ringing and give advice and management. Future's looking bright, and we hope to establish more successful sites. I believe you have got one platform that's down on Brothers Water. There has been one that's put there at the end where Ullswater and Brothers Water come together along the river there. I believe there's a platform been put there. We've mentioned that there's a history of them in the Eden Valley and a history up towards Penrith, and they're not too far away over at Bassant's Way. And they're pushing up from the south. We're getting one or two birds seen on Windermere now, pushing up, and I think from what I'm seeing, this colony is moving out west coast a little bit, but it's also pushing a little bit further up. And that reliability of fish source is a key one, like anything. Like anything, it's the food that's the key. And that is just a little slide to tell me I've finished. Yeah, any questions or anything, please ask. If you've got any awkward ones, don't worry. Don't bother.
So who's going to be the first one to make it? Oh, here we go. There you go, Simon.
Do you think Gulls water would be too busy for more
Not necessarily, because say they've started to be seen around Windermere, and they were seen at the top end, a young pair, and they're right in amongst outdoor pursuits and all sorts going on. What they tend to do when it's like that is that they will move their nest site onto a quiet location. They won't maybe go on the edge of the water, but what they would do is maybe, you've probably got some areas that are quite quiet and private, and they'd be the places, if you were trying to assess where to put a platform, if you did see an odd bird or whatever, you'd look at your quiet bits where they would go, and that's where they would naturally go a little bit anyway. They won't necessarily be too worried about the people. Esthwaite Water's really busy when they breed. There's boats all over, there's people, and they're there flying around. Half of the people don't even notice, in the sense that they're not there, they don't even realise there's ospreys there, but they're right in the middle of everybody there, so not necessarily, no.
How long has the platform been at Brothers Water? Was that recent?
As far as I know, I don't know when it was put in, but I know it's been there for a number of years. Yeah, I think it may be on National Trust.
It's not the same one as the, are you referring to the Goldwell Beck, when they re-wiggled the beck?
Yeah, it's mentioned that it's on the riverside there.
I've seen it there.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know whether you actually installed it.
No, I didn't. No. I just, when I did a bit of looking into it, I was told that there was a platform that had been put there a good few years ago.
Why would you put your eggs into one basket? Why wouldn't you do several platforms in different places? Or is it just because they're too expensive, or
I
is
think
it sort
really
of unsightly, or what?
No, I think really the time to put a platform in is when you start to see birds around. You know, if you start to see one or two ospreys around on a regular basis, of course, there's every chance that they'll stop on migration as they're moving up to Scotland, because Scotland's got so many pairs. The birds come through this way. So at the end of March into early April, there's every chance of you seeing an osprey stopping on its migration. Just like on its way back down from Scotland, there's a chance of you seeing a bird having a stop off and having a break. But if you start to see one that starts to hang around a bit longer, spending a bit more time here, flying around, that's the time then to think we've got an osprey around. And that's then the time to put a platform in, I would suggest, because that's the sort of work that I've been doing. People have been saying, yeah, we've got some ospreys in this area, we'll put a platform in, and inevitably, if we get it right, then they go on it fairly sharpish. Of course, it might just be one, but of course, you obviously need the pair there. But that can lead to a pair, you know, in future years. If one starts to stop, then maybe another will. And as the numbers increase, they're looking for new territories and new areas. So yeah, we've got a site at the RSPB towards Kielder way that's been visited, doing a bit of fishing, and we put a platform there. It's been catching the fish, landing on the platform, eating the fish, and it actually been seen carrying a bit of nesting material and things like that. So they start to build up like that. So I suggest it's probably as well when you start to see an osprey around. I'm surprised that has anyone had anything this last year, or nothing? So it's normally migration, but give us a nice water body through. I think that you'll probably be an odd one knocking about in the future for sure.
Any more questions from the floor or on Colin?
Why is it ospreys that get all the publicity and the effort to promote them and help spread them, rather than the goshawk or the peregrine or eagles or
I think given the work that I've done in the wildlife over my 40-odd years, I think there's always at a different point in time an iconic mammal or an iconic bird. At one time it was the goshawk, but I don't think they're publicised as much as osprey, in the sense that they're a hidden bird in the back of a forest. They're not that particularly popular in one sense, that they kill all the birds in one way. They kill everything in the territories and this, that and the other. But with ospreys, they're so iconic, they're photogenic, photographers, and it's birds that have been extinct. So like an osprey has been extinct through us, if you like, through people. And there's only 50 pairs in England and Wales. It's not as if we've got hundreds of pairs. They're still coming back from extinction. Where things like goshawk have had there's hundreds of pairs now, whereas Osprey is still one of them that's... Raptors are quite iconic, aren't they?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're an iconic bird. So it's a bit like dormice, things like that. You know, there's a... You know, beaver's probably the...
Yeah.
You know, the thing at the moment. Pine marten. There's always an iconic bird, and at the moment Ospreys are still iconic because they're so low numbers. We just happen to be in a lucky area that we've got a high percentage of England's population.
So
You know.
the bloke who was stealing the goshawk thing,
Yeah,
what would he be doing with that? Trying to breed it?
he was trying to take it back to an incubator to incubate them out and then sell them probably into falconry as wild stock breeding with inbred stock or bred stock, if you like. Because that would have been... Yeah, we actually incubated one of the eggs ourselves and put it back on the nest.
Right.
Yeah, so he'd be doing it for that. He could either be doing it for an egg collector, or we suspect because he'd wrapped it up in an egg box that he was trying to take them back to an incubator to hatch them out and then to sell.
And the
Yeah.
people try and do that with the Ospreys as well.
Not necessarily with Ospreys, but I think it's more egg collectors at that time. But yeah, because they go into the falconry world, whereas Ospreys wouldn't go into the falconry world, whereas goshawks would be a falconer's bird, you see. So yeah, like everything, there's one or two people that find a line that they could maybe make some money at. When we caught him, we got a list as long as your arm of convictions up into Scotland for peregrines and everything. It was not unknown to everybody once we found him out.
Yeah.
The good result of that is he never came back. He got community service, I think, and a bit of a fine, but he never came back, which was the main one, because it's hard to police woodland. It was pinching two sites for a few years, and so we just dropped lucky, really, just by willfully setting up a watch, which is great. We were so lucky to catch him, so lucky to catch him. In fact, he come the week before, and we alerted, and a mobile phone wouldn't work to set the alert, and he got away, but we got the car number. And strangely enough, I went back to that site in the week, and a goshawk come off the nest. I thought, that's unusual. Why has it come off the nest? Because it was still sitting on eggs. He'd gone up, he'd looked, and there was only one. It had only laid probably one egg. Well, I know it had laid one egg because we put a mirror up and we saw. So he came back the following week for the full clutch. So it was the same time as Sunday morning, and he come back bang on that Sunday morning and took the full clutch. And the phones worked then, and we operated this thing where we actually luckily caught him on the lane before he hit the main road. He was only 100 metres off the main road, he'd been away. But we knew this blue Fiat Uno, I can remember the details of it and see it as it happened now. I was glad he didn't get out of the car. I did have a big Rhodesian ridgeback that my friend had got that was stood there, that maybe helped him sit in his car. But yeah, it was quite interesting. He went quickly up the tree on spikes within seconds. Just it was a larch tree. Goss loved larch before the disease came, and he was quickly up on his spikes, up and down. He was only there like 10 minutes and in and out and gone. So that's how lucky we were. Yeah, thank you.
On this water,
Yeah.
that's been the sewage outflow pipe that comes from Hawkshead there, isn't it? And is that not affected fish stocks and the feed?
So you've got estuary water that runs in here, then the outflow goes down through and it eventually goes into Windermere through Cumbria.
Yeah.
Well, the sewage was down below, and below that the stream that then run out, it wasn't estuary water itself, it was the stream that come from it.
Right.
And then it was the stream that run through Cumbria into estuary. That's where there was a leakage
It's not,
and killed fish stocks in the stream. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Can I ask a question about drones? Are you using drones? I mean, they're used for everything these days.
Just touched on them slightly. I think you'd have to be careful on disturbance. If you know what I mean. If you wanted to fly a drone up to see if there was chicks or birds on a nest, you could be classified as willful disturbance, really, if you're going to disturb birds. But we have used drones to look for nests. You could use it to look for a nest, or there was a report of a nest here last year. We could use it for going over and looking there, but you certainly wouldn't use it when birds were on site. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah. You could be within the thing, but yeah, they can be of use. Yeah, there's no doubt they can be of use. I got sent drone footage and pictures of the Haybridge nest when it had blown out. I got a report that it had blown out, so it went up with his drone right to it and just showed me how it had all blown out. So that was interesting.
Anyone online?
Yeah. Anyone online?
Not so far, no.
Right, but I have a question. In terms of the breeding pairs, how broad is the gene pool? I mean, are they birds from here breeding with other birds from here, or is it a much broader?
No, it's a lot more broader. We've got birds that have been bred in Scotland as chicks have gone and they've come back and stayed here. We've got birds from different, from Kielder and then the different sites. So yeah, it's as much as it can be with them smaller pairs. But obviously there's a big influence from the Scotland birds.
But not from Europe?
No.
So, that was the first question. The second question, given the synergy with, or the supposed synergy with Morecambe Bay, what about the Solway? And the Solway coast?
Yes, and yes, there is. There's 1 or 2 platforms up there at the moment, and I think there was reports of ospreys being around there this time. Yeah, so it's another natural spot, but yeah, I think there's birds there now, albeit in low numbers. Yeah.
That would be hard for them to travel from here to feed them.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Can you tell whether the fish population in Ullswater is sufficient? I mean, obviously fish density, or however you want to describe it, is key in the end. I mean, are there enough fish in Ullswater?
It is key in the end. I don't really know what your fish stocks are like in Ullswater. You'd think that it's got to. Obviously, you need the shallower water. It's not quite a deep lake. Yeah, you need shallow bays and things as well, obviously, for them to catch them. Else otherwise they're moving up and down like that. Maybe the fact that it's really deep doesn't help in that sense. Certainly the shallow bays where I do most of my observing S-weight, that's where the ospreys will go to feed into the shallow bits where they can catch the fish, obviously in the warmer weather in the spring, early summer. But all these lakes and bits of pools and tarns around, they all contribute. So the osprey don't just feed in one spot, they will go off to a local lake at the top or a reservoir, as well as using the estuary with us as well. But they will go to several spots, several pools in and around. But we are, of course, awashed with Coniston, Windermere and places down there as well as the rivers and everything that come off there. The ones in Lancashire are literally attached to a river, just like these were attached to the River Eden there. And the ones over in Yorkshire, there's a few pools, but again attached to the river. So rivers can provide places that, as long as there's fish there. But I would think it's more of the surrounding pools as well will be important. Not necessarily just that Ullswater may not be teeming with fish. It could be that some of the other pools have someone's got a trout lake, or there might be some other fisheries around. I'm not too sure what the water situation around here. You can't be too far away from bits of water and rivers and things, can you?
I don't know what you mean by bits of water, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just frustrating because I've been to see the artificial nest created at Goldhill Beck during them, and I'm sort of praying that one of these days an osprey is going to show up. Obviously, the season is over in a sense, so nothing has come this year, so we have to wait to see whether by chance something will come next year.
What's Brothers Water like? I mean, that must have some shallow areas in it.
Yeah, I would think Brothers Water better than
That must
Water in a way.
give fishing opportunities.
Yeah.
And it's not too far then from the top end of Windermere, is it, to fly down for them?
Wearing my hat as the organiser of these talks, and last year we started doing some field visits. I'm just wondering whether we can try and block you to show us an osprey nest or whatever sometime next year. I don't know how we would work that. I mean, in terms of, because you don't know, of course, from one day to the next. Well, I don't know.
Absolutely
If
fine.
you could inform us in some way that there was a place where
No, no,
be
come
able to come in. I don't
bring
know
a
how
group
feasible
down
it is to do it, to
Yeah.
take a group of, I don't know, 10, 12 people.
Bring a
whatever.
group down and I'll happily show you for a couple of hours a couple of nest sites. Not a problem, not a problem. I'll enjoy doing that.
Okay, I'll come back to you on that.
I knew there's a reason you wanted me to bring you a Christmas tree.
Are there any more questions from the floor or from online? Okay, can I ask you a final question which relates to the donations? We have a donations basket over here, and also online we have a donations link. We try to encourage people to make donations, particularly in favour of charities nominated by the speaker. Do you have a particular charity in mind?
Yeah, it gave me a bit of thought on which ones to do, because I think of several, but I thought it was probably fitting for the area to donate to the air ambulance.
Okay, it's the air ambulance, that's fine, we'll do that. Gordon, would you like to say a few words? Gordon's our chair, sorry, I didn't say.
Thank you.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yes, hopefully you can all hear me and hear me on the Zoom as well. Yeah, I'd just like to thank you, Mike, for coming a fair distance to come and talk to us this evening. I was lucky enough earlier this year to be walking close to Esthwaite Water and could see the ospreys flying there and making quite a noise. And it really is quite something to see them, and the fact that they've actually come back and are re-establishing themselves. I know you mentioned right at the beginning that there is a record of ospreys in Ullswater, but that was 1800. In 1800 we had a lot of fish in Ullswater, and I guess the same would go for Brothers Water as well. I'm not quite sure of the numbers of Brothers Water, but certainly Ullswater, sadly we've lost most of our fish. We have about a tenth of the fish that are in Windermere. And it must be at least 20th or more less than what you have in Esthwaite Water, which is kept stocked. And yes, Ullswater is not shallow. This evening is not specifically about, this is the thin end of bringing ospreys back to Ullswater. Clearly there's an attempt already up towards Brothers Water. But it's interesting to work that thought process about what it might take to bring ospreys back to Ullswater, and tonight has been fascinating in terms of how they behave, how they breed, what they need to survive and to thrive upon, which has been great. So I'd just like to thank you, Mike, once more on behalf of everyone, and if we could show Mike our usual round. Thank you, and thank you to everyone on Zoom. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
So the fisheries theme is still going to be with us, because our next speaker is someone called Dr. Louise Lavictoire, who is the head of science at the Freshwater Biological Association, and she's going to speak in the Glenreading Village Hall on lakes and fisheries ecology, and that ties well also with a new initiative that the Friends of the Ullswater Way have just taken on, which is to conduct a monitoring survey of the quality of the waters in Ullswater. And we've been involved. Just last week we started in training volunteers. 12 people were trained last week by the Freshwater Biological Association in a technique which they're calling the lake fly methodology. In other words, they're looking at the flies in the lake, the mayflies in particular, stone flies, and you can tell the quality of the water by whether or not you see particular species of mayflies. Last week I was on my first training program, and we came across a green drake mayfly, which gets lots of bonus points. Now we found it at the Outward Bound at Watermelon, just down the road from here. So the process of training volunteers is going to take place over the course of the coming months, and we hope, starting off with, say, 6 sites, by the end of the year, but we hope to get 2030, whatever. We have to have our long protocols of approval and landowners and so on. But anyway, that's one of our aspirations for the future. So actually, if anyone is online listening to this or wishes to become a volunteer, it's very easy. You just drop a line to us and we put you on our list, and we'll have 2 more training programs before the end of the year. So that's all from me. Thank you very much. The talk in November will be our last talk of the 2025 season, and we'll see what comes up next year. But thank you very much to the people who came today. Thank you also to those online who've stuck with it. And thanks lastly again to you, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you very much.